predominantly focuses on a code tool called Git, and we'll cover in detail what it is. Most of you might be familiar with something known as GitHub, and what essentially is Git and what essentially is GitHub. A lot of people probably have a misconception that they're one and the same thing, but they're actually not. And the way it works is usually it's like from the title you can make out that uh, if you're not using Git and you're a developer of any sorts, it doesn't matter if you're writing code in Python or whatever language you're working with. If you're writing code or you're working on a collaborative project that involves code, you should be using some form of Git. Um, and if you're not doing it, then there's terribly something wrong. Even if you're working alone as a single developer, you should still be using Git. And I'll cover those things in details. So a little bit about myself first. So I've been in the technology space for a decade now. I graduated from Delhi College of Engineering 10 years back. Went to US, did my master's from Carnegie Mellon, worked in Bay Area for a while. These are some of the companies that I've worked with across the globe, and have a diverse sort of experience. And pretty much since 2011 I started working with Git, and since then I don't think there's ever been a project that has not involved Git. Even when I'm working on my solo game projects, in my spare time, in my free time, I still use Git because it's just that good. And once you get a hang of it, there's no going back. So yeah, I've worked with a lot of different game companies and different software companies, and pretty much first order of business every time I'm starting a new project is setting up Git, and you'll see in a moment why. So today's agenda mainly focuses on these key things. So we'll first briefly cover what Outscale is, um, and then go into the details of Git, what it is, why you should care about it, how you can go about using it, and in the end take some question and answers for whatever you have. Just please leave them in the chat. So last year we started Outscale. Me and my co-founder Ishita, we started Outscale with the core idea that we wanted to focus on providing quality training for developers. And since game development is something that I've been passionate about and been working in this space for more than 8 years now, this is the first training that we have started with. Essentially, what we are doing is we are basically taking young developers, bringing them on board, taking them through an extensive training program, and then helping them get jobs with some of the best gaming companies in India, and even now looking at partnerships abroad as well. So we want to make sure that we are bringing up quality talent. There is never a compromise on quality. We can compromise on the quantity in terms of the number of developers that we train. We're happy to cut those numbers down, but we'll never compromise on quality. A lot of the game, like the training that we focus on, is going to be using Unity for the client side. So if you're doing this particular training program, you'll be heavily building all the client side work with C Sharp, with Unity. But a lot of the key focus would still be on tools and technologies that will let you translate these learnings to even other game engines, and potentially not even to game engines, right? If you want to write Android apps after that, or web apps, a lot of the things that you learn translate really well. So you can abstract these away and translate into this. A lot of focus is towards building even server-side technologies using Node.js, which is a JavaScript-based system that lets you build servers. So we focus both on building client-side simple projects, such as Hitman Go type of an example is a classic example where it's a lot of levels and whatnot, and it's a fairly complex project. And we'll look at the Hitman Go repository, GitHub repository as well towards the end of the session. And also we'll focus a lot more on building a lot of real-time multiplayer games. This gives you a good hands-on experience of building not just games in Unity, but actually understanding what it means to build servers as well at the same time. So that's why we call it full stack, because you have idea about client as well as server, not just Unity, but backend systems as well. A lot of the focus is again focusing on team projects. Game development or any kind of industry never works in isolation. Anytime you join a company or an industry, chances are 99% you'll not be working as a solo man on a particular project. You will always be part of a bigger team, and that's the core principle here as well. From day one, you're put together in teams, and a lot of the time you're working with these teams in parallel to make this, and this is where Git actually shines. It'll smooth out so many issues when you're working with teams across different regions, across different cities, across different time zones. Git just breaks it there. And at the end of our training project, people who clear our entire process basically can avail our career services for free, where we actually help you polish up your LinkedIn, your profile, and get you set up for mock interviews, connect you with a lot of these international slash domestic game companies, and you'll have the opportunity to interview with them if they shortlist your resume as well. So a lot of our focus is taking developers who have a basic idea of what game development is and turning them into quality developers. Um, Beyond this, what we're mainly hoping for is we do something called an income share agreement. This lets us give this training absolutely for free. Now, the way this works is that once a developer who has gone through a training process gets a job on the other side of the training, um, then only they are liable to pay us back the cost of the training, and they pay it back in terms of an installments, much like a education loan. This way, you if you're already taken education loans for your bachelor's degree or whatever, you don't have to worry about spending more money right now before seeing the results. So you can first get a job, and then without burdening your parents, your family, you can actually repay for the cost of the training and the effort that you have put into you can repay for that after you've gotten a job. And this kind of guarantees that our incentives is aligned with your incentives as well. You do have an option of upfront payment process as well. So if somebody is has that much confidence that they already know that they'll land a job after it, and they don't want to take this income share option, they can very well avail this upfront payment process. And if that was not enough, we also make sure that you know what you're getting into, right? So the first week of an entire training process is always free, so you don't have to sign any contract before you know what kind of training we'll be doing, before you have a taste of what this training process is going to be like. So at the end of the first week, once you've had a hands-on experience of how we work, what kind of teams you'll be put into, what kind of assignments you'll be doing, after that only you can choose from one of these two options. And don't get me wrong, if you're not putting up a lot of effort in terms of the assignments that are assigned to you, we will kick you out as well. So it's like I said, we never compromise on quality, because when we put a candidate in front of a company, um, we want to make sure that we're putting best candidates forward. That makes sure that next time companies do keep coming back to us whenever they have new requirements, and they always get quality from us. So as long as you're putting in the effort, putting in the time, uh, you'll do well through this. All right, so that's a bit about what we are doing at Outscale, um, and we'll come back to it at the end. But now let's dig into what exactly Git is, and what is the all hoopla about Git. So what is Git? So essentially, Git in one word is called a version control system. What that means is basically every time, think of any project that you've worked on that involves any form of code. Okay, so anytime you make a change, and you keep that project, that's one version of it. Next time you come back and make some changes to some scripts or whatever, that's another version of the project. But if you're maintaining it just on your hard disk, you do not have a pure way of knowing, say, you did something today, then it was working fine, then you did something tomorrow, then day after tomorrow, and the next day, and now it's not. Now you do not have a clear way of identifying where did you introduce this problem. Was it 1 day back, 2 day back, 3 day back? There's no clear boundary of what each version is, and that's where Git comes in. So essentially, it's a version control system. That means every time you make changes to a particular project or a particular file, you tell Git that, hey, this is one version, and now store it. Next time you make changes, you say, hey, this is another version, now store it. So if after this you get some errors, you quickly go back to the version before it, test it if it was working, then you know that the changes after that that you did for this version 2, those are the changes that broke the system, whatever the system was. So essentially it boils down to a version control system. Now, Git is not the only version control system. There exists other kind of version controls as well. SVN and CVS were some of the more popular ones before Git came into existence. And these were the ones that were used by the industry. I've personally worked on all of these about 10 years back. Um, they had severe drawbacks, but those were the most advanced ones at the time. And while we go delve in deeper into Git, I'll point out what are the key differences between SVN and CVS. But essentially, if you see any organization that's using SVN or CVS at this stage, you should be going in and encouraging them to transfer over to Git because they're seriously slowing down their productivity. Fun fact, actually Git was created by the same guy who created Linux. Yes, the Linux, actual Linux itself. So 30 years back or something, Linus Torvalds, he created the Linux project. And when he wanted to get other people's feedback and suggestions on how to improve Linux, um, he saw this effect where people wanted to even improve the code themselves. And over time, uh, there were thousands of people that were contributing to Linux project, which eventually gave, you know, to this popular concept of open source, came from there. And these contributions were getting so huge that the original author had trouble, and that's why he stopped working on the Linux project in early 2000s. He started working on a new kind of version control system because he was not happy with SVN, CVS, or any of these, and eventually that gave rise to Git. And Git was publicly announced in 2005, I believe. So it's been around for a while. The biggest advantage of working with Git versus any other system is that you can work offline. Once you have everything set up, you can continue working offline. You do not need to be 100% online. When you need to push your changes or when you want to say, hey, I'm done with all my work, now here, take it, that's when you only need internet access. But in other cases, in SVN, CVS, that was not true. You always had to have internet access in order to work. So that was the biggest uh, point that made companies switch to using Git, apart from all the other advantages that it brought in. Like I said, Git is not the same as GitHub. GitHub is what normally developers associate most commonly with Git, but there is a big difference. Git, at its fundamental level, is a version control system. GitHub is a website, a company that provides you tools to work with Git. So they give you space to upload your Git repositories and store them for free as long as you keep it public. So GitHub is just built around Git. There are a lot of other companies that provide the same service apart from GitHub. Um, GitLab is another popular one as well, and there are a lot of other ones as well. So GitHub is just that it's the most popular one in the market, but do not mistake that Git is the same as GitHub. They're two different things. Git is the core thing that is the version control system, and GitHub just built on top of it to provide developers easy tools to work with Git and upload your repository. So if you have a repository in GitHub, you can actually transfer it to say another website that allows the same thing as well. So just be clear on that. Why should you care at the end of the day? It's just another tool. What value do developers derive out of it? So any good company, will always ask you for your GitHub profile if you're a developer. This is by far the most single important online piece of portfolio that you can have. And very much like LinkedIn, it's something that you keep building um, over time. It's not something that you'll go in and suddenly have 20 different projects show up on GitHub in one day, but you know, you over time, and you keep experimenting, learning new things, experimenting with new technologies, every project that you work on, you keep putting it up there, you keep adding it to your pieces of portfolio, and that potentially shows to a company, a hiring manager, an engineering manager, that all the different technologies that you have experimented with, that you're working with a lot of these different tools, and you're comfortable with Git as well. So if you look at a lot of these top companies, one of the key requirement itself, when they're hiring developers, is that you should be comfortable working with Git, because in some shape or form, they might have built their own version of GitHub internally, depending on how big the company is. Google and Facebook have their own versions. Others directly rely on GitHub or one of GitLab or tools like that. So this is one of the key important criteria. So always keep adding your projects. It doesn't matter whether you're a first year student, a fourth year student, 10 years into the industry, whenever you're working on something, make sure you're uploading it to GitHub as well. So this is typically the importance criteria, at least for good companies that want to look at your technical skill set. So your GitHub profile, or your Git profile in general, um, is rated higher than your LinkedIn profile, and which is rated higher than your resume. Um, Now everybody thinks that resume is super important, and yes, it is. But if you think about it, your resume is the only thing that an HR will see, right? Your LinkedIn is something that your HR and your engineering managers will see as both. But your GitHub is only something that your engineering managers or hiring managers will see. And those are the people that have true decision making power. So you want to make sure that those people sign off saying that this person is great and we're going to hire him. And for that, having your GitHub is even more important than having a super polished resume. Yes, resumes are important, not saying that they're not important, but keep building GitHub on top, keep adding those things to your LinkedIn as well, and make sure the best quality work reflects in your resume. And there are respective links to important projects within your resume that people can click and directly go there and check it out on your GitHub profile and actually see what kind of code you write. So especially for developers that are just starting or just graduating, right? Um, so so I graduated from Delhi College of Engineering, now called DTU. A lot of DTU graduates approach me for guidance and suggestions, and I suggest them, hey, um, there are 150 odd IT computer science graduates each year from the same college. Everybody's doing the same courses. Everybody's doing similar projects. How do you stand apart? The moment I look at 5 resumes from people from DTU, they are all exactly the same, right? But the one thing that sets each of them apart is based on their GitHub, right? So if somebody is a web developer, I'll see how many different web development projects that they have done. So this is the one key point that can make you stand out. Your qualification is the same, your grades would probably be roughly the same, so every time that you're graduating, when you're entering into the workforce, right? And you just graduated, this is the one thing that will make you stand apart. And I think the biggest drawback is that young developers think that I need to only put up only the super polished resumes and, sorry, the super polished projects and projects that are super complex and have a lot of different technologies that I might have used. That's actually not true. You can put up anything from small to large as well. Um, what this shows is that you are making an effort. So let's say I'm a web developer, but suddenly I got a urge to experiment, say Android. So I spend a couple of weekends experimenting with Android projects. So I put up those Android projects as well, but just make sure that in the front of the project you are highlighting, hey, this is a small experiment. I was trying out a Coursera course with a link to the Coursera course, and this is the tutorial that I followed along and built this sort of to-do app. So you've clearly highlighted that, hey, this is a small project, probably not worth an engineering manager's time to review. But hey, I experimented with Android. I know a little bit basics about it. Even though I'm a web developer, I have a general curiosity of other things. So here's a small project for it. Now, this gives a lot more, talking points, especially when a manager is thinking about whether to hire you or not. Maybe the requirement is they are looking for a web developer, but at the back of his mind, he's like, hey, tomorrow we want to experiment with Android, and now suddenly you got a leg up compared to all the other candidates because you are a web developer. There are probably 20 other web developers he's reviewing, but now you've experimented with Android, your basics, you're familiar with it, even though he'll never test how much you know about it, what you experiment. But in his mind, you're somebody who's comfortable with experimenting with new technologies, thinking about new stuff, and that subconsciously gives you a plus point compared to other developers. So do not shy away from putting up your small to large or whatever mid-sized projects that you have. Just make sure that the moment somebody opens that particular project up, the first file, the README file indicates what the purpose of this project was, what all things that you tried to do, but in a concise manner. If it's a experiment, mention that this was an experiment doing blah blah blah. If it was a polished, say, game project or an app that you build or whatever you build, highlight those things as well. If you've used some new technology within it, say you connected using some new fancy database or something as part of an app that you're building, highlight those things as well. So I don't have to dig into your code to figure out what was fancy about it, but you've just told me directly. Um, Hardware always crashes. What I mean by that is, I see a lot of these devs as like, hey, I have a lot of projects I've done in the past, but they're on my hard disk, they're on my desktop, they're on my laptop. Um, the day your hardware is going to crash, you're going to lose all your projects, and then you'll have nothing to show. And for that, at that point, you might as well be lying that I have 100 plus projects, right? I don't know if somebody else who's reviewing it, they don't know because they don't see anything. So um, it's always better to show it rather than tell. That remember that, always show rather than tell. So if nothing else, treat it like a GitHub, treated GitHub like a Google Drive where you're just backing up these projects, if nothing more. Uh, and the key important aspect is there's always a section where you can pin repositories that show up at the top, and I'll show you an example of this later in the demo. Um, if you have 10-20 different projects and you experimented with 5 different Android apps, and the sixth one was the actual final project that you combined all those 5 pieces and make a final product, you can pin the sixth one to be at the top. So the moment I open your profile, it's right there, and it's the one that's highlighted, and it's the one that's I'm most likely to click and check out, right? So you can, within your profile itself, how you'll put your most important stuff at the top of your resume, very similarly pin those repositories and put them up top, so anybody who's reviewing your profile knows the important stuff is at the top. So that's something you can very easily do, and make sure that your key hiring managers are looking at the right thing. So make it easy for them to review you. Don't make it hard for them to find all the important and the good stuff about you. Okay, cool. So how you should use it. So installation. Now this is something that I debated a little bit whether to show or not, but I think a lot of our audience is very tech oriented. So I'm going to skip over the installation section because literally if you just Google Git installation, GitHub installation, you'll find it. Whether you're on Linux, Mac, Windows, something else, it doesn't matter. There is an installation guide out there already, and this is super simple. So I'm not going to cover the installation, but there are some other key aspects that I'll cover, so I'll be spending slightly more time on those things. All right, so now we're going to switch to sketchboard. Now this is something new that I'm doing this time, so pardon if things don't work as smoothly. Give me 1 second. All right, so yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna basically, for people who are new to Git, just quickly cover what exactly happens when you say create a new GitHub website, or when you create a new repository. What are all these things mean? Okay, so so imagine that you have uh, GitHub here, right? So now, so this is your uh, sorry. So this is your GitHub website. Okay, so you go in there, click a couple of buttons which says create a new repository, and it's done. It shows you a repository and gives you a link to download that repository. It's empty, there's no files in it. So let's say you and your friend are both going to work on this particular project, whatever this project is, Android, iOS, doesn't matter. Workflows are all the same. So you have this repository on GitHub. Now your friend, let's say you are A and your friend is B. Okay. So both of you are going to work on this particular project. So both of you will go and download this particular repository on your local machines, and you'll have exactly the same repository duplicated in your own local code base. Sorry, on your own local machine. Okay. So now, then you have your local machine. So I'll just start drawing something here. So let's say this is A's machine. Okay. So when you have uh, a, a new repository, by default, it starts with something called as master. Now, master is a default branch that comes with Git. So ignore the word branch. We'll come back to it once I explain you this briefly and what exactly branch means. So we'll just come back to that. Okay. So now you have this branch called master. So imagine this is master. Okay. So if you have like an Android a project, you go in, let's say add uh, a Java file, right? Like you add a couple of Java files. These are new Java files that you have created, say. Okay. So now, after creating a couple of these Java files in your project, you say, hey, okay, I think this is good. I'm ready to move on to the next stage, but I want to create a version of this. Remember the first thing that we discussed, version control system. So you want to create a version of this. Okay. So here you'll say git add. If you're working in command line, you'll typically write this command git add. But if you're using, on Windows or Mac or even Linux, there are a lot of like UI based tools as well. You can just directly select the files and say right click git add. So all this means is now you're saying these two new files are going to get added to Git. Okay. So Git will now mark them as added. What this means is basically that these files, every time you make changes to it on top of this, Git will be able to track them because Git knows that these files have been added. So once you've added them, the second thing you'll do is git commit. Okay. So now when you say git commit, it says that these changes that you did, or in this case, the new files that you created, these files are good to submit into Git. And here a new version is created. So this is like the first version, which has both the files or any number of files that you might have created. Okay. So now this is your main version. Now here, if you run this command called say git log, you'll see it will show one commit. Okay, so this is one commit. You might have given some message associated with it, adding two new files or something like that. And when you say git log, it will show you there is one commit which has, adding new files or something similar. So this is all this stuff is right now on your local machine. Remember, nothing has yet sorry, one sec. Nothing has yet moved to the GitHub website. So if you go and check the GitHub website, it will show again an empty repository. This is all on your machine. Now, let's say that you keep working on it. Each of these arrow represents, say, a new commit message, and you keep committing stuff. Okay. So you keep committing, and now once you've committed everything, all of these things that you have committed, so these are all your say new commits. Now you're happy that, hey, I'm good, all these commits are done, whatever I was working on is tested, it's working. Now you'll basically do is, sorry, what you'll do is, okay, one sec. You'll say git push. Now this is when you need internet access. Before, whatever you're doing for commits, all this, things, you did not need internet access. You could be anywhere without access, and you could still continue working. So when you say git push, this is when, so this is the actual uh, GitHub, what you see on the website. So now your local version of master, uh, your local version, which was here after all these commits, is getting now pushed to the GitHub repository. So after you have pushed and you go and check at this point, after you have done this, when you go and check on the website, you'll see all these commits and their log messages that you have added, right? So this is basically saying that, hey, okay, I've done everything. Now go ahead. I'm ready to push all these things. Okay. So at this stage, imagine, B is working here and they have the same, thing. Uh, After you have pushed, what they will do is they'll say git pull. So now all your commit messages that you had just pushed and they pull afterwards, now B has exactly what you pushed. So they also get exactly the same copy. Okay. So it's like as if you copied over your entire thing to B. Now if B keeps committing new things here, 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 say, and then they can do a push here. So they'll say git push, and now the remote repository at this stage will have all your commits as well as all of these commits that B did. Okay, and then next time when you pull, you will get all the work that B pushed at this stage. Okay, when you're here, then you only had the work that you did. Now when you reached here and you did this, let me add it here, say git pull, you now have all the work that B even did as well. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Okay, so now this is done. Remember here that we said that this is also master. Even on GitHub, this is also master. So far, everybody has been working in the master branch. And we'll just come to what I mean when I say the word branch. Now, so this is how typically a simple workflow in Git works. When you have multiple people, when they have done something and it's tested locally, they are sure that it's working and it's not going to crash the project or anything like that, then they do a push. Others can pull those things, and then others can continue working and push. So a lot of these things happen simultaneously. So now let's come to what, when I said, remember that master is a branch. So what do I mean by that, that master is a branch? So remember originally we were talking about CVS and SVN. These were exactly kind of like this, but everybody was working with just this master branch. There was no local branches that A and B are committing to. Everybody was directly pushing their code. Every time you used to commit something means you were doing basically a push. You are directly doing a push anytime you make any code changes. There was no concept of these local commits. So that's why you needed internet connection, because it was pushing everything out. And there used to be a lot of issues because if everybody is trying to push at the same time, your code can get jumbled as well. So Now Git introduced this concept of master branch and in general branches. So essentially, if you think about it, think of it like a tree. Okay. So what I mean is uh, when I say there is, something like a master, say this is master. Master is nothing but the trunk of a tree. So this is just the trunk. Now, as you have a trunk of a tree, you have leaves, right? So what essentially happens, right? Every time there's a new branch uh, that can come out of a tree. The same name is used in Git as well. So this is called a branch. So anytime you create an offshoot uh, from the master trunk, it's a branch. Now, master itself is a branch, just that anytime you create a new repository, this is the default branch that Git creates for you. Okay, so all your code by default will live on this master branch. But the way branches are very powerful is if you think of it as a tree, right? Um, you can have branches that create other branches that create other branches that create more branches and things like that, right? Like a typical branching kind of effect. Now they added it. Now somebody would say, hey, why is this even you know useful? So here's an example. So think about, say, any kind of a game, right? Like so something like PUBG, right? So the main code of PUBG sits in the master branch. Now it's a big team that's working on this particular project. So there are a lot of different features that are being developed. So let's say there is player the player needs new mechanic, like he can hop, okay, or jump or slide or whatever, right? So this is a new mechanic that needs to be added. So if people started working directly in the master branch, then if they have bugs, if they have issues, everything will get into the master branch and the game will become completely unstable. You will not be able to test it, you'll not be able to release it, etc. So whenever development starts on a new feature, you will create a new branch for it. So this will be something like a feature. Okay, so say feature one. Oh, sorry. Uh, 1 second. Say this is feature one. So now, whenever feature one is getting worked on, say feature one is like your player can slide. Till the time the developer implements it, the designer tests it, all the animation, everything needs to happen. Everybody essentially is working in this branch. So all the commits are happening here, right? This ensures that your master branch is untouched, you know, and say it takes, 2 weeks or 2 months, who knows how long, to actually add all the different commits that are required for this particular feature. Meanwhile, you can think of that, hey, another new request came in for a new feature from the designer, which is, say, an achievement system. Every time player does something, there needs to be achievements unlocked. Okay, now all the code responsible for the achievement system will go on a separate branch. Okay, this way again master remains completely free of any bugs and everything. Once all the bugs are fixed in, all the tests are done, say the achievement branch is more important, so there are more people working on the achievement branch, and this has more commits, and this gets tested and done first. So now you can merge this back into your main branch. So this is called git merge. Again, these are all specific terms and you can just look them up. But I'm here trying to explain what conceptually happens, and These are exactly the terms. So git merge. So you created an achievement branch, you did all the commits on top, and then you merged after everything has been tested, approved, um, verified, then you merge it back into the master branch. And now at this particular stage, if you make a new Android build, it will have achievements. But remember, it does not have this feature like the player, say the player mm, sliding. Player sliding is the new feature. This one is not yet in because it's not been tested. It's the designers haven't finished work on it. They're still testing it, etc., etc. Right? So commits are still happening, and this can continue in parallel. So maybe like 5 developers are working on this, 10 developers were working on this. So naturally, this is not yet ready to get shipped to the users. So this can continue happening. So a new release went out, or an update went out to Play Store, and this has the new achievement feature. Now if this particular feature gets done, say at there are more commits coming in or whatever at this particular point, now this can get merged here again. So again, this is nothing but a simple git merge, right? So now this gets merged into the master branch, and next time after that, if there is a new release at this stage, now this release will have both the achievement as well as the the sliding feature new one, because here now the commits for all the things that we did here are also merged back into it. Okay, so hopefully this clarifies as to what branches are. Very similar to how you see a actual physical tree, where you have the trunk and then there are branches coming out everywhere. It's exactly, analogy wise, it's exactly the same, just that once a branch is done, you can take it and merge it back into the master, and all the commits that went onto that branch are actually brought in back into the master at that particular point. So that's the core role that branches play. And remember, master is nothing but just a default branch, and that's it. Now typically how you would use this, right? So here we just saw a core functionality, but say four of your friends in your college are working on a project or something, right? So how would you typically use this flow? So you'll have your main master branch, right? So you have master here. Now depending on how you split the project, ideally the way you should do is you should create a new branch for every feature. And typically these would be like feature slash, say, feature 1. Okay, so this is like branch 1. Another branch would be feature slash feature 2. Okay, so once once you have created these branches, you have committed stuff into, after that you can merge them back into master. And once they are merged back into master, all the features that you have added in these two branches are available in master at this particular point. Somehow, say, imagine if you started working on a feature and you didn't like it, designer says, the team decided that, hey, we don't want to merge this, or it's not a good feature how we thought it is, you just ignore that branch or just delete that branch, right? You don't need to merge it back into. So you don't have to do anything on master. Your master still has all the things that are good and has been approved. You just ignore this particular branch, and you only see, at this stage you will see just your approved features from feature 1. So typically every time you're working with your friends or any kind of professional project, you'll create a new branch for features. Now, if you have a lot of bugs coming in, if you have somebody who's testing it as well, right? So for fixing these bugs as well, so you'll create branches like bugs slash bug 1. And ideally you'll replace the words feature 1 and feature 2 with the actual name of the feature. So say player controller, achievement system, joystick, any of those features. So feature slash joystick is the name of a branch. Bug slash player currency not updated or something. So you'll name them appropriately, but the idea is think of it how you will organize folders, right? Like if you have a lot of bugs and each of them is a single file, you'll put them all in a single folder called bugs, right? So it's easy to identify what each of them represent. So similarly here you'll have bug one, bug two, however you're tracking it. So this is one of the very common use case that you'll see even in very big projects. This is exactly how it boils down to. And games that have been going on for 4 years in development, this is the at the core of it, this is the same workflow that I've used at big companies as well. So you'll create these branches at the right time. Once they have approved and tested, you will merge them back into master, and master is always the golden copy or the most stable branch in your entire repository. So that's your typical average workflow. Uh, okay, cool. So hopefully that kind of shows you uh, how all of this Git works. Everywhere I've written something as Git. So Git merge, Git log, Git add, Git commit. These are all exactly commands. Something that you can very easily use from UI. Um, if you're working with command line, I would encourage you to work with command line because it lets you get a hang of a lot of these things, and later on you can move to using any kind of UI based tool as well. But it's up to you how you feel comfortable. I'd highly encourage all young developers who are starting with Git to use the command line tools. Okay, cool. So now we'll quickly switch to a repository where I'll show you a lot of these different branches. So this is our typical Outscales GitHub page. It's called github.com/outscale. If you go there are a bunch of these repositories. So Hitman is a project that one of the dev teams from one of the previous batches of our training did. And here you see there are like 500 and 43 different commits, and this was only a 2-week project, and it was a team of 3 developers only, and still you see more than 500 commits just within 2 weeks. uh, and here you see there are 16 different branches, right? So if I quickly switch to all branches, then here you see all the different branches, and this kind of gives you a sense. So if you look here, um, here we followed a slightly different nomenclature, where there were 3 developers, so everyone created their own branches under their own names. So Bhavyam slash polishing prefabs, Bhavyam slash gates and keys. So gates and keys was a new game design feature that we wanted to add, so it was part of and Bhavyam was implementing it. So you see a lot of these repositories that are named Bhavyam are the ones that predominantly he was working on. So achievement 3 star. Similarly, Vinay was working on a lot of enemy stuff, and you see a sign here that says merged, which means that this has been merged into the master branch as well, right? So Swapnil has interactables, which were individual systems, then the input system, um, you know, camera system. Camera system, we never were able to test it, and it wasn't good enough, so we abandoned this branch. We didn't merge this one, say, right? So that's another example that you did a lot of changes, but it didn't feel right. The designers didn't approve it. It didn't pass testing, and this one is still not merged into the master branch. So those are the typical examples. Um, so if you were not using anything like this, working even on a 2-week project, so 2 week, only 3 developers have 543 different commits, right? And these are commits that let me show you a quick log of these as well. So here you see each of these are individual commits from each developer. uh, some of them you'll see this merge basically. So once you basically remember when I talked about different branches, so this was a core gameplay branch that got merged into the main master branch. So that's why you see this merge commit as well. Same way here. So individual developers, when they work on their own branch, they submit a request. I do a code review. I go in and do a code review of it, and then I approve it if everything looks good, and I go ahead and merge it. So those are the typical workflows that everybody uses in the industry. And once you start working with us, these are the kind of things that you'll be working from day one. All right, cool. So that's a quick kind of introduction about how do you go about using Git in general and what kind of things that you do. So I just showed you our repository. Um, Another important thing there is that there is a repository. There's a pinned repository at the top on our GitHub profile, which is by the name of pre-course full stack game development. And this has all the essential resources that you need to learn to get started about game development if that is what you're interested in. But even for people who are not interested in game development, the very first module of this particular repository is a collection of free resources regarding learning Git and getting started with GitHub. So I'd encourage you all to go and check that out. These are just collection of YouTube tutorials and things like that. Sorry. Yeah. So so as I briefly mentioned that a lot of our focus at Outscale is basically doing training and making sure our developers are ready for the industry. And as our core effort, we are launching our first part-time batch. So far, we have worked with students in a full-time capacity, especially developers who have already graduated. They're not, they were not happy with the way they were coding before, the kind of job offers that they were getting, and the companies that they were working with. So they focused 3 months completely uh, with us, and we were able to get them much better job offers uh, within just a short span of 3 months. And those are exactly the repository that you see was Hitman was the one of the game projects out of that. So this is the first time that we're launching a part-time program. The classes will be in evenings slash weekends. We're still figuring out what exactly the timings would be. Those will be announced shortly. But our first part-time batch starts on July 6th. So this is something for ideally people who are entering into their fourth years now and would be looking for a job immediately afterwards, or people who are already working professionals. Typically up to 3 years of work experience is ideally the skill set that we're looking at. um, a lot of our core focus is building those key coding skill set up, making you an awesome world-class developer. um, and if you're somebody with more than 3 years of experience, feel free to just directly reach out to us. um, we'll be launching a couple of new courses as well in a couple of months. um, Full stack web development is our core focus as well, and Android, iOS. I didn't mention Python and data sciences. That's also something that we are keeping on the radar. So a lot of these things would be announced very shortly. But as of now, July first week, we are kicking off our game development batch. And you can go to our Outscale page on LinkedIn. That's where we always announce our new upcoming batches and these kind of webinars and stuff. All right, cool. So that's pretty much wraps up, and we're just about time. So if you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat now. I'll quickly take a look as well. And yeah, these are some of the key important emails. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to drop them at admissions@outscale.com or careers@outscale.com, and we'll be happy to get back to you. All right, cool. So let me quickly take a look at the chat as well. Alright, cool. Doesn't look like that there are any kind of questions so far. Um, Yogesh says I've experienced the hardware crashes. Yeah, I think if you worked long enough on a lot of different machines, a lot of different computers, pretty much everybody's experienced those kind of things. So once you get kind of burned with it, you realize the importance of these things. Um, so cool. Alright, so I'll just hang around for a couple of minutes if anybody has any other questions. Otherwise, feel free to directly email us. I'll just drop the email in the chat as well. Uh, scale.com. So this is our email ID. And if you have any other questions, feel free to just directly send them to us via email as well. Uh, cool. All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for stopping by today. It's great having everybody there, and have a good weekend. Bye.